Studies have shown time and time again that women are good with money. We are excellent investors. We are more cautious. We do more research. We are more mindful. Like we open more businesses on average than our male counterparts. We have more successfully run businesses on average than our male counterparts. The studies, the stats, the statistics are out there for anyone who wants to go and research them. Once we are empowered with the knowledge and the resources, we are so good with money.
Hey family, today we're blessed to have with us a true shero in the world of financial literacy. You've heard me talk often about the importance of us understanding our finances as well as sharing them forward. We can do well and we can do good at the same time. Well, Bola Sokunbi is an example of just that person. She's been helping women take control of their financial futures, and as a best-selling author and financial education instructor of the year, Bola's got the credentials to do it. So, what's most impressive about her to me? Well, her passion for lifting up other women and teaching about how to gain financial freedom. Let's get with it. Meet Bola.
Hi, Janice. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. You know, it's often said that our mothers are our first teachers, and that book dedication of yours to the original Clever Girl makes me smile even now. So please, let's start our conversation about your mother. Tell us how she shaped your journey and what your childhood was like.
Yeah, so my mom is essentially my superhero. She got married very young. My mom was 19 years old. And both of my parents are actually first generation everything. So they're the first in their families to go to grade school, middle school, high school, college, everything. So my mom got married very young. She was 19 years old. She had just graduated high school. She got married to a much older guy, my dad, who was in his 30s. At the time, that was pretty much the norm. And when she got married, the idea was that she was going to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of the kids when my dad went out to provide for the family. And that's what she did for several years. And when she got into her 30s, which is when she had me, she started to see things that were happening with her friends that she just wasn't very comfortable with. And as a little child, I didn't quite understand what those things were, but I had observations. So I remember I would be in the living room in the corner and I would see her friend come to our house with their suitcases and other children, their kids, and they were there because they were spending the night. But in reality, they were there because they had nowhere else to go, because they were running away from either an abusive spouse or they had lost the spouse and the family was coming in to take over everything. And my mom was essentially their last option. And so in retrospect, I realized that my mom being exposed to situations like that made her uncomfortable. And so she wanted to be able to contribute to our household and be able to stand on her own 2 feet financially. And so at 5 years old, my mom decided that she was going to, when I was 5 years old, go back to college. And I remember her very vaguely having an argument with my dad about, I'm going back to school. And he's like, no, who's going to watch the kids? And she's like, you. And so I went to my mom's college classes. I sat in the back with her and she eventually got her degree and she became a contributor to our household despite the fact that my dad was resistant to it. Over time, years went by and she eventually became our household breadwinner because my dad went through a health crisis. He went through getting laid off at work and etc. And she stepped into that role where she became our household breadwinner and eventually paid for me to go to college in combination with scholarships. And she just set the stage to showcase to me that I can achieve what I want to. And I never want to be a liability on anybody. And as a woman, it's important for me to have options in my life. And so that was a huge lesson that my mother taught me.
And, you know, it's so interesting. Our mothers share so much in their personalities and their desires for us, as I've learned more about your mother. Education is freedom was often stated in my home. And if you speak to either one of my children or my siblings today, and you say education is, they will complete the sentence freedom. And
Yes.
so in a sense, your mother was liberating you not only from things that were historic amongst populations you may have grown up aware of, but she was liberating you toward the freedom of everything that was in front of you. And I think that's just fantastic. So kudos to her and kudos to you for carrying on such a beautiful legacy. Now about Clever Girl Finance, what was that light bulb moment that said, this is your ministry? Take us back to where this all began.
You know what? I didn't think that this was going to be my ministry. I graduated from college as a child of immigrants, and my goal was to make my parents proud. They had sacrificed a ton for me to go to college abroad, migrating to the US. They had given up a lot of their dreams. My mom, because I couldn't qualify for student loans, had ended up taking on a second career, moving here to support me. She started out someone who in Nigeria was a multiple MBA holder, worked in banking. She ended up moving here. She was taking care of kids, working as a nanny, doing all these odd jobs to help me get through college. And then eventually went on to get her nursing degree at the age of 50 plus. And so for me, coming out of college, I just wanted to make money. I wanted to make money, make my parents proud.
Earn money, earn money. You know, making money is illegal.
Earn money, earn money, yes. I wanted to earn money and just show them that the sacrifices that they had made for me and my siblings were worth it. So I hit the ground running, just putting myself to work. And then I started facing terms I just didn't understand. Like I went to a HR meeting at work and they talked about the 401k. I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is. They had a conversation about credit. I'm like, what is that? But anyway, I'll participate. And so in all my efforts of like trying to save, learning how to invest, I had amassed a little bit of money. And I was talking to my friends about all these different things I was doing to save. And I went to a financial planner because I assumed, okay, the next logical thing to do was to go have a conversation with a financial planner, because as immigrants, my parents didn't necessarily understand the US investing system. They didn't know what a 401k was. So I assumed that I should go talk to an expert who could guide me because my friends were similar to me. They were young Black women who were trying to figure out this whole financial world. And I go to this financial planner's office and I sit there and he, I tell him what my goals are. I tell him what it took for me to save the money. I'm giving him this spiel on what I imagine myself doing with this money, how I want my money to grow. And he's like, did a boyfriend give this to you? Where did you get this money? Are you married? He was so concerned about who gave it to me. And I felt humiliated. I felt it was very condescending. It was very rude. And I was like, how dare this person try to diminish my effort? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it into my own hands. And I'm going to figure out what I need to do to grow my money. I'm going to learn everything I need to learn about saving and investing and budgeting. And I'm going to put it in my own hands and in my own control. And so that was very much the early stages of me wanting to build wealth for myself. And then I started talking to my friends about saving and investing. And I became that friend that always talked about money. If there was a way to earn money, invest money, save money, Bola was your girl. I was always talking about it. And then fast forward a few years, I got married. I had my twins and I started feeling a sense of unfulfillment. I felt like at my career, I was just a number. They could let me go at any time. I felt like I wanted to do something that really mattered, that would have an impact, but I just didn't know what it was. And I also think that there was a bit of postpartum depression tied in there where I just felt just a sense of like, I just didn't know. And so I started brainstorming all the things I was interested in, all the things I liked to talk about. And everything was like money, wellness, money, women, money. And that's really where the idea for Clever Girl Finance came from. I was like, let me talk about my experience with money and let me share my friends' experiences with money and just put it out there in the social world on a blog and share this with other women and see if it resonates. And it did. Women are like, wow, that sounds like me. This is something that I've been wanting to do, but I've been ashamed to talk about it. I've been made to feel like I'm stupid because I don't know. It's embarrassing to try to have this conversation because people expect me to know this. And so it was very refreshing. And a lot of people were like, I love the fact that it's someone who looks like me or it's another woman's voice. And it's not just a generic, male created content that's being pushed at me, but it's been slapped with pink. And it's like, here's finance for women. And so that's where Clever Girl Finance kind of came from in a high level summary.
It's fantastic to hear you share that with us. And it's a story, again, that many women experience when it comes to money. Where did you get the money from? Are you smart enough to handle the money? Are you innovative, thoughtful, and are you committed enough to actually have that money become something? more than just a way to expend. But there is an expanded edition of one of your books coming out along with a new workbook. What made it time to add more to your message, Bola? I mean, what new wisdom are you adding to ditch debt, save money, or really build real wealth?
So thank you for asking about those. And so it's really because people have asked. So I wrote my first book, Clever Girl Finance, Ditch Debt, Save Money, and Build Real Wealth about 7 years ago. And that book it has been a hit, right? It's been very popular, but the world has changed in the past 7 years. And 7 years doesn't feel like a long period of time, but we've had a pandemic, and there is now the age of influencers, where before we looked to celebrities as like, kind of like the thought leaders or thought makers, celebrities and like industry leaders. And now we have your everyday girl next door on social media giving you advice and tips, and she has her own platform. And now there is the age of buy now and pay later, which is heavily marketed at women more, especially again on social media. And so there's all these changes. People are recovering from the pandemic. There is a high inflation right now. We're hearing the job market is great, but it really isn't when you think about it. The cost of food is so high, and people are trying to figure out, how do I navigate this world of finance, right? How do I navigate building a career? How do I navigate building wealth? But there are all these factors working against me. Inflation is high. It's difficult to invest. I have all these student loans. And then the minute I get on my phone or get on my computer, there are all these ads telling me to spend, buy now, pay later. It's hard for me to maintain my personal discipline. And so that's where the expanded and updated version of the book comes from, just to help women build the skills and have their own toolkit in their back pocket to be able to navigate their finances and still build wealth despite what is happening in the world right now. And then the workbook, which is called My Wealth Plan, is an actionable and practical toolkit for them to write down their plan, establish their plan in a framework that guides them through just digging deep back into their past and identifying who they are and what shapes them when it comes to money and how they spend it and what they feel about it, what they think about it, to lay out your plan for what you want to achieve with your budget, with your investment, with your career. To even, I talk about relationships and how the person you marry, the person you build a life with, can impact your finances, and how you want to be mindful when you're making decisions with them and when you are choosing that person even. And so that's why those two books are necessary right now.
They absolutely are. And two thoughts occur for me. One, in terms of, you speak about the importance of having your mate and considering, what that's like, especially from a financial perspective. I think that's really great that you're approaching that for anybody, not just young people and not just women, because so many relationships break up around finance. But the other thing that occurs for me too, as you were talking, is that it is good information regardless of your gender. And so I love that, you're doing this. Your work emphasizes patience in financial journeys, Bola, and success doesn't happen overnight. I often say history happens so much quicker these days, but success does not happen overnight. And so how did you come to understand the power of hope and perseverance in finance?
I think it's just really seeing where my parents come from and just seeing the contrast, especially in my family. So my dad is a twin. I have twins, or twins that run in my family. And my dad, in his own right, is successful. He has two PhDs. He worked as a diplomat for the national oil producing company in Nigeria, which is where I'm from. He worked for OPEC, which is tied to United Nations in Austria. So when you look at him from the outside, you're like, wow, this person is incredibly successful. But my dad did not start the first grade until he was 13 years old. And he did not start that first grade until age 13 because my grandfather did not believe in colonial education. This is what he called the British education at the time. Not only that, he did not believe in educating the female child. So my dad's twin sister is not formally educated, which means my aunt does not read and she does not write, even though she's smart in her own right. But she cannot write a sentence. She cannot read a book because she was not formally educated. And so for me, when I look at that, success means many different things, but my aunt is successful in her own right because she went on to build a successful trade business and became a successful trader, even though she doesn't formally read and write. And so sometimes we get caught up in what the standards of the world are, or standards of social media are, of who we should be by what age and by what time and by what phase of our life, but it doesn't always align like that. And I think it's important for us to get clear on what we want to achieve, right? And understand who we truly are, and then measure what we want to accomplish and our success that way. So we're going to see a lot of overnight sensations, or what seems to be overnight sensations all the time. But when you really pull back the covers on those things, you realize that, wait a minute, this idea of success that we're seeing, it took years in the making. It took decades in the making. It took time to achieve. And I think that's really important for people to recognize.
Well, I agree with you 1,000% there. And, you're leaning into something that gives us an opportunity to go to a more practical moment for our listeners. What is one thing our listeners can do right now after listening to this podcast to start their journey to financial freedom? I mean, give us that first step to get the ball rolling. Financial freedom, we're talking.
Yeah. So when it comes to financial freedom, and I didn't answer that in the previous question, but I think the first step is really to get clear on your why. Why do you want to achieve financial freedom? What is the why for it for you? And the reason why I say this is the most important step is because the journey to building wealth is not straight, paved, comfortable. It is difficult. It takes hard work. Life is going to happen. You're going to fall off track. There are going to be setbacks. And it is your why that's going to be your motivator that's going to keep you going. And your why is unique to you. It's personal to you as an individual. Why do you want this? Is it because you want to be able to take care of your family? You want to be able to leave a legacy for your children? You want to be able to move to a different country in 5 years? You want to be able to start your own business? What is your why? That's number one. The second thing you need to do once you establish your why is get clear on your goals, right? What exactly is it that you want to accomplish? And that is very personal to you. And that's why it's called personal finance, right? So are you trying to achieve debt freedom? Are you trying to save or invest $1 million? Are you trying to build, like yourself, Janice, $1 billion business? What is that thing you're trying to achieve that you deem as financial freedom for yourself? Because to me, having $1 million might be financial freedom for me, but to you, having a paid off mortgage, a piece of land, being able to take your family on vacation once a year, that could be financial freedom for you. So number one, you have to get clear on your why. And number two, you have to get clear on your goals of what it is that you want to achieve. Once you have those two things in place, then it's time to start putting in the work. What are you going to do every day, every week, every month to inch you closer to what it is that you want to accomplish?
Well, you lean in a little bit on something that I think we should actually lean further into. Often I say discipline ain't a dirty word. Okay.
No.
How can specifically women stay motivated and disciplined as we take these first steps? I mean, what's your secret sauce for turning these actions into lifelong habits?
So, when it comes to discipline in today's world, there's a lot of things working against you. You can wake up in the morning and say, you know what, today I'm not spending any money. I'm going to transfer money to savings. I'm going to focus on my work. I'm going to invest X amount of money. You're minding your business, you pick up your phone, you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok, there's an ad, there's an influencer, there's a this. And then because your phone watches everything you do, you leave the TikTok, you go to your browser, you turn on your TV, everything is connected. There's all these ads. They're telling you to spend, spend, spend. Before you know it, you're on Amazon, you're on Target, you're on Walmart, you're spending the money that you plan to save. And you're like, oh my God, my self-discipline. And so number one, I say, help yourself, right? Discipline is a muscle that you have to continue working on every single day, right? So you set the intention that you want to achieve something and you work on discipline. So number one, what are you consuming, right? Because what you're consuming helps determine whether or not you can stay focused on your discipline. Who are you surrounding yourself with? What kind of content are you spending your time watching or listening to on social media? You want to be mindful and do a cleanse there. Clean out what is not serving you. Clean out what is distracting you. Clean out what is constantly following you to spend or dip into savings. Block, unfollow. This is not about them. This is about you. Number two, make it easier for yourself to succeed. And that is through automating your finances. This means every time you get paid, have money automatically sent into your savings account. You can set this up with your bank. You can set this up with your payroll. If you run your own business or you have an inconsistent income, you can log into your bank account. There's features in there that allow you to set up money percentages to get transferred into savings. You can do those things. That way, when you get paid, you're not having that mental battle of should I or should I not spend, or you're not telling yourself I will save later. The money's already gone to savings. So cleanse, do an assessment of what you're consuming, where you're spending your time, and then automate your savings. This helps you with just maintaining that discipline, and then be intentional about your why and what you want to achieve, and focus your energy in that direction, which means empower yourself with knowledge so that you can continue to maintain that discipline. In the case of financial freedom, the way you're going to maintain your discipline is through knowledge and being clear on your intentions. When you're trying to get your body fit, the way you maintain your discipline is through diet and working out. With your finances, it's by what you're consuming and where you're focusing your intention.
Bullet, this is great information you're sharing with us. And you're giving us really lessons that I think are so rich for wherever we are, whatever point we are in our lives, whether we're beginning the journey of financial freedom or whether we're just checking in to see how we're doing. What you're sharing is really important. And, also sharing our life stories can be powerful. Often I'm asked, and I'm paid to speak and get asked, share your life story. And I'm like, you can read it. You can go online. You can find these things, but it can be quite powerful to hear someone share their real life examples. And that's what I'd like you to do right here. Is there any particular story that you think about most often from those that you've shared with us? Or is there one that you haven't shared with us? It hasn't made it into a book that has stuck with you that can be meaningful in this moment? We're living in a world where information is just coming at us all over the place. And as we've already talked about, discipline in our behaviors is important, and discipline in what we allow to come into our consciousness can often feed us or derail us. So what life stories are you prepared to share right now that can really give us a real life example that inspires, teaches, or leaves us on a stronger path around the work you do?
So I have so many stories, but I'll give you two stories, one of which I talk about often, one of which I haven't shared often at all. And they're tied to mistakes. And the reason why I like to share stories associated to mistakes is that when it comes to money, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make small mistakes. We're going to make big mistakes. And the mistake that people make about the mistakes that they make is that when they make their money mistakes, they automatically tell themselves, okay, I'm not good with money. I'm bad with money. No one in my family has done this. And this mistake has shown that I'm not meant to be that person in my family to do this. I am meant to fail. Women are bad with money, and so on. And so I have a story which kind of elevated my business several years ago. It was my saving story. It was about how I saved $100,000 in 3.5 years after I graduated from college. And so in the aftermath of saving this $100,000, I got to a point where I felt like, you know what, girl, I have money now. And so what is the next best thing you do when you have money? You go out and you buy a Chanel handbag. That's what you do. And so I went to the Chanel store and I bought one handbag.
And we say we're treating ourselves, or yes, we owe it to ourselves.
I owed myself that Chanel handbag. I bought this bag. I was so proud of myself. I was so happy I wore this bag. I was so excited to have this bag. Everywhere I went, that bag was on my shoulder. It was like my prized possession.
And it didn't have your name on it, right?
No.
Your signature was not on that bag.
No. And so I was then like, you know what? I have this one Chanel bag, but I want another one. And I want another one. And it became this habit where every few months I would go buy a Chanel handbag. And the issue with this was that it was no longer the same excitement as that very first one, because I was now a collector of bags. They were sitting in my closet, not being worn. The cost per wear was terrible, right? And they were essentially almost like a waste of my money. And I would look
and you were
closet.
Building somebody else's brand at your expense.
Yes. And I would look at my closet and feel so guilty because I had all these bags that I was not wearing. And I was like, well, I'm not a real housewife of anywhere. I have nothing to prove. Why are they here? So I decided to recover from my mistake and go out and sell the bag. This was several years ago. So the first Chanel bag I bought for like $2,850 and I sold it for about $5,600. Now those bags are well over $12,000. And it was almost like, okay, you know what? I made a little profit. I sold this. I sold all the rest. I made some money. But then I was like, you know what? Let me put on my financial expert hat and let me actually really explore this mistake I have made. And if I had taken that 2850 and invested it in, for example, Amazon stock for that just the one handbag, by the time I had sold that bag, I would have had $33,000. Imagine how much money I would have had for all the other handbags.
Yes.
And this is not the idea of, oh, you're crying over a spilt milk. The milk is already gone, blah, blah, blah. But this is just, this is what it could have been. And I could have told myself, you know what, Bola, you're a failure. You failed. You bought these handbags. You made a big mistake. This just shows that you can never build wealth. You're just so caught up in material things. But I was like, you know what? I made this mistake and I'm going to share this mistake, not only as a lesson to other women to be mindful of how we're spending. There's nothing wrong with treating yourself. But I always say do it within reason, where it makes sense. If I had bought 10 Chanel handbags and I was wearing 10 Chanel handbags and I was getting my money's worth out of them, that is great. But I was not wearing them. And so my then lesson to myself was like, okay, I've made this mistake. How can I then recover this money that I lost on that mistake? And that motivated me to go out and invest and find ways to make my money grow. So I did not sit down and say, woe is me. I could have had $33,000 from this one bad investment. I took it and I turned it around. I said, okay, Bola, you made this bad mistake. What can you do to recover from it now that you have learned your lesson? That's number one. The second,
that's a powerful story. That's a teaching story. Let's see what you got for the second one.
Yeah. So the second story was more of a, so this first one I would say was kind of like an intentional mistake. I put myself in this position. I took myself into the Chanel store to buy this bag. This second mistake was more of a mistake from a lack of knowledge. And so I was working my first job. I had then gotten a better paying job and I was switching jobs. And at the time I had a 401k, which is an employer sponsored plan. And with my contributions in this plan and with what my employer had contributed to that plan, I had about $40,000. And again, remember I had said earlier, I was new to the whole 401k situation. I didn't really have a lot of knowledge. I just knew that if I contributed, I was going to be able to save money for retirement. That's what I was told at the HR meeting. I didn't realize that in order to move my money without being penalized when I moved to a new employer, I needed to roll over my 401k. Instead, I had my employer just give me a check and I took that check and I put it in my bank account. And what happens when you take a 401k check from your employer that you do not roll over? You get hit with income tax and you get hit with a penalty. And so I end up losing over half of this money, about $20,000, because of my lack of knowledge. There's two ways this scenario plays out for people. Oh, I did not know this. This has happened to me. It's because I'm bad with money. I'm not smart enough to manage this money. The system is working against me. That's why I did not have this information. It is what it is. I'm never going to contribute to a 401k again. It is a scam. I've heard this been told to me many times by people who have made the same mistake. The second scenario is like, wow, I did not realize that this happened, but now I know and it will not repeat itself. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to figure out how to recover that $20,000 by making extra contributions to my 401k and my investment account so I can play catch up with the money I just lost on that penalty and on that income tax I did not expect to pay. And so I chose that second option because I didn't know that I was going to get hit with those fees and that tax. But once I knew, I was upset and I took that anger and I channeled it into, let me accelerate ways to contribute more so that I can get that $20,000 back as quickly as possible and get back on track with the goal I had for my retirement savings. So when it comes to mistakes, we're going to make them, whether it's intentional, whether we walk ourselves into Chanel and spend all that money, whether we make mistakes because of a lack of knowledge, whether other people influence us to make mistakes. But the lesson of the story, the moral of the story is, what are you going to do when you have learned the lesson. And a lot of people tend to go the woe is me route. This is not meant to be route. I am bad with money route. And I want to encourage you listening that you do not want that to be the route for you, because failures, mistakes are stepping stones to success. But the only way they can be stepping stones to success and to allowing you to build wealth is if you can take those lessons and learn from them. Not woe is me, but what can I do better?
Well, you talk to so many women, as you're doing in this moment, about their finances. Bola, what's a common thread that often goes unspoken in traditional financial advice? I mean, what are women really saying when they open up to you?
A lot of times it's just the fear. It's the lack of financial confidence. Studies have shown time and time again that women are good with money. We are excellent investors. We are more cautious. We do more research. We are more mindful. If you take a woman's
We pay loans back.
Yes. We open more businesses on average than our male counterparts. We have more successfully run businesses on average than our male counterparts. The studies, the stats, the statistics are out there for anyone who wants to go and research them. Once we are empowered with the knowledge and the resources, we are so good with money. Mm-hmm. The challenge we face is our confidence. And this stems back historically because we have been told what is a woman's place. Most of us can sit back and tell you we have a great recipe from our grandmother, from our great grandmother about how to make a great dish, a great casserole, a great pie, a great this. And this is because going back to our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, we would get pulled aside and get taught these things. Whereas our male counterparts will get pulled aside and get taught business and how to run the business, how to manage finances. We were not taught those things. And so now the world has changed, especially now in this generation where women are sole household owners. They are breadwinners. Women are choosing not to have children or not to get married. Women are single mothers raising children. And so we are now in positions where we have to make decisions about finances because we are heads of households. And because we are making these decisions, right, we have to also build our confidence alongside that and empower ourselves to do well with our money because we can do well with our money. We have to build that confidence. That's the number one challenge I see. Women not feeling that they have what it takes to do well with their money. But the truth is that we can. And the solution here is knowledge, empowering ourselves with knowledge. Once we know, we do it well.
Yes. And speaking of knowledge, as a financial educator, what's the most unexpected lesson you've learned about the relationship between women and money? And what surprised you the most?
I don't think anything is unexpected when it comes to women and money, to be honest. Like, we are fearless when it comes to doing what we need to do to get things done. We somehow always seem to make things work. We somehow always figure out how to feed our kids, put food on the table, keep the lights on. We figure it out. That is our superpower. So there's nothing that necessarily is surprising about what we can do. But the thing that does surprise me is how incorrect some of the stereotypes are. So a big stereotype that you will hear is that women are big on retail therapy. We just go and shop our feelings away when we're sad. We go and spend the money. We have no control. But guess what? Men are exactly the same. They indulge in retail therapy just as much, if not more, than we do. They may not be buying clothes, but they're buying watches. They're buying electronics. They're buying bigger ticket items than we would buy.
And calling them investments, right?
Investments, yes.
But we know that true wealth goes beyond just dollars and cents. Yes. All of us know that.
Yes.
So how do you define real wealth for women in today's world, Bola?
So my full name is Bola, and I was named by my grandmother. And I'm originally from Nigeria, as I told you. And my name means I was born into wealth. And people hear that and like, oh wow, your grandmother was so materialistic. She named you, I was born into money. But traditionally in my culture, wealth means joy, it means peace of mind, it means happiness, it means health. It means all of those things that money cannot necessarily buy for you. It means just having contentment about the life that you live, having peace of mind about where you are. And that is what wealth is. That's what true wealth is. Money can help you get there a lot of times, right? If you plan accordingly. But wealth is really being able to leverage whatever you build with your money, whatever assets you build, whatever money you have, being able to leverage that money to create a life that gives you contentment and peace of mind. You can have all the money in the world, but if you do not have peace of mind and if you do not have your health, you don't really have anything.
You're so right. And I've said often and cited examples of it when people are perceived to be wealthy or perceived to be successful, and they die very unhappy deaths. They die untimely deaths, and they live lives that aren't personally fulfilling. And the only moments of joy they have oftentimes is when we see them on the life stage in front of others. And so, I think it's critical that we understand. People say, okay, money can't buy me love. Money can't buy me health, happiness. Money can foundationally support many of the things and people
Yeah.
we love and the happiness we have. But unless we are finding that happiness within our own, as you referenced earlier, superpowers, then I think that money does not generate for us the life of wealth that we envision or seek it to have. So
I
I'm
agree.
just thrilled that you're imparting this in such an explicit way, in such a way that we can take from it, learn from it, and carry it from this conversation. You referenced your grandmother and naming you so well. Let's talk about legacy. How can women ensure that the wealth they build doesn't benefit them only, but also empowers the future generations, as your grandmother cared for you, your mother cared for you? How do we make sure our daughters and granddaughters are being given the ingredients for success, Bola? I know reading your books and doing your new workbook is going to help them. How do we do that ourselves in an everyday way that examples or teaches them?
Yeah, I think that is such a great question. I think when it comes to passing on legacy, not just to our daughters but to our sons as well, it is important to remember that it's more than just handing over money, because we've all seen the stories of children who have been given massive trust funds, massive inheritances, and that money has never gone beyond that child's generation, or that money has been spent and has dwindled into nothing despite all the hard work of prior generations to establish that legacy. But, it just did not last. And so I think what's even more important than passing on financial legacy is passing on knowledge and empowering our children with what is the value of a dollar, and helping them understand what the meaning of hard work is, and instilling in them good ethics and good morals, because that is what establishes decent human beings, and that is what is going to allow that legacy you build to carry on, because the people you give it to, the children you give it to, will respect the effort you made to build it, and they will respect the value of what they have received, and they will not just go out and blow it because they don't understand what it means to receive such a privilege. And so educating our children, empowering our children with knowledge is very important. And a lot of people say, well, Bola, you know what? I'm still figuring out my own finances. I'm still trying to figure out how to pay off my debt. I haven't even figured out how to buy my first home, etc. And I'm like, this is the perfect time, because even if you do not tell your children anything, they're going to learn by observation, right? They're going to watch you and they're going to make their own assumptions. So engage them on their journey. You know what? Mom is trying to pay off debt. This is what I'm trying to pay every month. I want you to join me on this journey so that you can see how I'm trying to pay off this debt. And you know what to avoid, whether the debt was by a mistake, or you know how to make sure you don't take advantage of people who are trying to sell you debt when you're signing on to loans. But this is the journey I'm going on. Try to teach your children about budgeting and savings. Bring them on that journey. We're going grocery shopping this week. This is the budget we have. How can we fit all the food we're trying to buy into this weekly budget? This is, you don't have to give your children what your income is, but you can tell them these are some of the bills we pay in the house and this is the budget. Let's work on making sure that all these bills are paid before we do the shopping, before we go on the trip, so they get an understanding. Because sometimes children don't understand why their parents have made certain decisions, and then anger starts brewing. Mom says she's not buying me the new sneakers. Mom says we can't go on vacation. Dad says we can't do this and that. And they get so upset with you, but they may be angry because they don't understand the reason why. And if you just explain to them this is what it is, it helps them start to think, as opposed to thinking selfishly about, oh, my sneakers, my sneakers. It helps them understand, wow, mom and dad go and work for this money, and these are all the bills that they have, and this is what they have left over. This is why I have to wait until Christmas to get those new sneakers. This is why we can't go on the vacation to Disneyland this year. We have to wait until next year. And it just helps them start to build ideas in the head of what hard work really is and what the value of money really is. And I think that's something that's lacking in a lot of the younger generation today, understanding the value of money. And that's where massive amounts of debt comes into play, because they haven't been taught these lessons. They fall into the trap of the buy now, pay later, of the low interest rate to finance the shoes, to finance this, to finance that. And so it is on us to empower our children with these lessons, so that they
It is so
understand the value.
it is so powerful you're saying this, and throughout our conversation, you've provoked thoughts for me in my own life. I mean, I've shared this publicly before, Bola, where I was queen. You know, you vote the queen for the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. And I was queen for that year. And well, I was voted queen more than one year, but in this particular year, I wanted this outfit, and I asked my parents for it, and our conversations usually happened in the nook in the kitchen at the table, and when we were asking for money. And I asked about it, and my dad started out by saying, oh, we worked so hard, for you. And my mom stopped him. And I remember this. I remember this to this day. She said, Daddy, we don't work so hard because of our children. We work hard because of the decisions we made before we had the children. And then they went on to explain to me what the budget was, when you talked about budget, what the budget was for running the household and what they put aside to do that. The truth is, they were telling the truth. However, how I read it was, well, there's some more money over there. They put aside all they had to run the house at that particular period in our lives. And so, I think that I've often said, listen out loud. I think learning out loud is important too. And you're speaking to that, sharing as we experience things with the next generation. They can learn as much from our errors as our successes. And when we're candid with them, when we're clear with them, I think they value the lessons that we teach so much more. And you've talked beautifully about one's own personal finances and family finances and generational finances. Let's take it to the community. How can women use all of this financial knowledge we're talking about to uplift communities? How do we not just spread the wealth, but how do we ensure that people are having, and I recall you spoke about the definition of wealth going beyond money. How do we ensure the wealth of our community, so to speak?
So I'm a huge fan of paying it forward, right? Once you've learned something, you don't just keep it to yourself. Yes, you tell your kids, you empower your kids. And just to add to the previous point, a lot of times we may not have been taught what we want to teach our children, and that's okay. What we don't know, we can learn. We get to a point in our lives where we are adults and we have a choice. We can be victors or we can choose to be victims of what we don't know. And so we either going to decide that, I didn't know this. My mother did not teach me this. My father did not teach me this, but I can empower myself to learn this so I can teach my children. So I come from the approach of no shame, no judgment. And I just wanted to clarify for the audience that, whatever you don't know, whatever you haven't taught your children, this is not, the comment I made was not to shame or judge you. It's just to encourage you to decide now to do things differently. Now, going back to the question on community, I'm a big fan, like I said, of paying things forward. And I always believe in sharing. And the way I believe communities get built is from just exchange. right? From word of mouth, from exchange, and from empowering others. And I believe that once you've learned something that you feel has touched you, especially from a financial perspective, a book, a resource, a podcast, take this information and share it. So, for example, I recently did a podcast episode about medical debt. And medical debt is something that really plagues the minority community because of a lack of knowledge when it comes to how that whole medical debt world works. And as a result, people go deep into debt, their credit is destroyed. But there's very simple steps they can take to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so my brother is a pastor, and I said to him, listen, I just had this incredible guest who shared these incredible tips about medical debt. I'm going to give you this podcast episode link so that you can share it with members of your church. That is one way. And the reason why I said that to him is because he has mentioned to me in the past that there have been members of his church who have struggled with medical debt. And I remember that. That is one way you can share knowledge, share resources to positively impact your community. A lot of people think that when it comes to helping a community or transitioning wealth in the community, you have to go and build a community center. You have to have a groundbreaking initiative. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be information you impart to your neighbor, to your girlfriends, to your sister, to your church community, at your local urgent care clinic. Just information that you give out that helps people, that gets spread. Because if that information helped you, and you tell someone and it helps them, they're going to spread the word. And this is how you empower your community with knowledge. And in turn, that knowledge can help them build wealth. So you do not have to be the millionaire in your community to make an impact. You do not have to build a foundation or a new building or or have a groundbreaking initiative going on. Simply imparting knowledge can make all the difference in helping your community build wealth.
I think you are so on point. I don't know if you know who Sean Robinson is, but she operates Sean Foundation. You can Google her. She's known for her television presence. She operates Sean Foundation. And I came into contact with her foundation through her invitation to me to learn more about the relationships that she builds. And what she's chosen to do is to bring in very small women's organizations or initiatives that don't lift up to the scale that they would get corporate funding or foundational fundings from other larger, legacy rich foundations. And I had the blessing to speak at the organization quite recently, although I've been engaged and known it for some time now. And just sitting on that stage and looking, Bola, at all the women who were in there making impact. And they do. And Sean says, if you empower one girl, she can change the world. And I sat there and I looked at the impact that each of them were speaking to what they were doing in their own little zip codes and how impressed I was by, wait a minute, that started there because now I know about it and it's bigger, or they did that and saved that school from shutting. It's powerful what you're speaking of. And so I'm going to have to connect you with Sean and let you help her with her organization's goals, because she will welcome you like a sponge. And I know you will love the work that you learned they are doing.
I would love that.
Yeah. Well, I think we can go 4 for 4 now.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you 4 questions and you give me 4 answers. There are no wrong answers. Okay? So the first question is, you get to host a dinner. Mm-hmm. You host this dinner for any 4 people throughout history, as long as they are human. We do live in a world of AI. Okay. So Siri's not invited to this dinner. Okay. Alexa is not invited to this dinner. But who's going to be at your table and why?
Okay. So I would invite Michelle Obama. I'm just intrigued about who she is and her life. And I would just love to talk to her and understand how she has established herself as a leader, a mom, a wife, amid scrutiny and just, a lot of challenges. I would invite Maya Angelou. I have read her book, her first book, and her life story, especially as a child, is just so intriguing to me. It is one of immense struggle, and she became this incredible global force. And I don't even know what I would ask her. I just want to bask in her presence. Um, I would invite my maternal grandmother because I never got to meet her. She died young, but she's my mom, who is my superhero. She's my mom's superhero. And so I would just love to meet her and just get to know who the woman that inspired my superhero is. I would also invite my maternal grandmother. I did meet her, but I met her much later in life. So when I met my grandmother, she was in her 80s. She died in her 90s, and I didn't get to know her well, because similar to her daughter, my aunt, she wasn't formally educated. We had a language barrier between us, and I didn't get to spend as much time as I would have wanted with her to really get to know her. So I would invite her as well.
So many people want to invite their grandmas and their great grandmas,
Yeah.
women who they've heard stories about, and especially women who they've had no stories shared with them
Yes.
about,
Yeah.
and they want to know. That's a good dinner. What about music? What four pieces of music are you listening to, and why?
So I'm a very Afrobeats type of girl
Ooh,
as Nigerian. So I'm listening to Thames right now. I'm listening to Burna Boy. I'm listening to an artist called Asake. And I'm listening to another artist called Ira Star. So they're all Afrobeats
yeah.
artists, but I love them all.
Yeah, I was recently in Martha's Vineyard, and I was invited to dinner by a girlfriend, and she not no, no to lunch, and she prepared this beautiful fresh fish from the sea, lobster for my son who went with me. We were both at a business conference, and I can't do the shellfish he could, and we were sitting there as she was preparing, and she has these Afro beats going, and it was just so beautiful, so wonderful. I know my son will just like, when he hears this, he's going to be like, yeah, mom, see, I told you, because he's the one who turned me on to Afro beats. So yeah, I'm liking your playlist. How about books? What four books do you recommend to our audience, and why?
Okay, so I mentioned Maya Angelou at the dinner, so I would recommend I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, Why the Cage Bird, because that's her story, and it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful book. One of my absolute favorite money books, Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. That's a fantastic book. No Excuses, Brian Tracy. This book changed my life, just especially in the moments where I just felt down and out, going through what I mentioned, the postpartum depression. That No Excuses was just a book that it just says it as it is. It's easy to read, and it's like, listen, don't be your own stumbling block. Get out of your own way. Life is hard. We know it.
Right.
Um, and then a book I'm currently reading that I am enjoying so far is The 5 a.m. Club. It's about taking control of your morning, and it's by an author called Robin Sharma. I'm enjoying it so far, so I would recommend that as well.
Oh,
Is that
fantastic.
four? Yes,
Yeah,
I think
that's
that was.
four. But I mean, if you got others you want to share, girl, you go for it.
And as a mom, I'm a mom. I have twins, and I started my business when my babies were 13 months old. So there was a book, I can't remember the
How old
author.
is your baby?
I have twins, so I started my business when they were 13 months old. They're 11 now. Um, a boy and a girl. But a book that really helped me navigate was called Moms Mean Business. I can't remember the
Okay.
author, but it's just about juggling motherhood and business and that balance. Because a lot of times, a lot of books I read about entrepreneurship, and it's nothing against these authors. They're fantastic books,
Uh-huh.
either by men who have someone taking care of their kids, or by people who don't yet have kids, or their
By
kids
the
are
way,
grown.
hey, look, Bola, by the way, I just ordered that 5 a.m. Club book for
Yes,
some
it's a good
friends.
book.
I just ordered five of them.
It's a good book. Yeah, I like it so far. So, Mom's Mean Business was helpful.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm a new grandma. I have a
Congrats.
5 month old, and I have an 11-week old.
Wow,
Last year, didn't know I'd
congratulations.
have grandkids at all. And now my son has gifted me with Aria Carolina and my daughter with Jet. So I'm just so excited.
Beautiful.
I'm so
Wow.
excited. I'll share the
Wow.
books with the moms, okay?
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you the last question. Oh, I hate that it's the last question. It won't be our last question. We'll stay connected, okay?
Yes.
Um, Bola, what four pieces of advice, financial or otherwise,
Hmm.
do you have for our audience? And if either of those pieces of advice were gifted you by someone else, please share homage to the person who shared it with you.
Okay, so the first piece of advice is financial. This is one that my dad always told me, and it was penny wise, pound foolish. And it's essentially it essentially means that if you cannot manage money when you have a little, doesn't matter how much you have, you're not going to be able to manage it then. So be smart about your little pennies so that you know how to manage your big bucks. That's basically what that means. And he would tell me whenever I got my pocket money, penny wise, pound foolish. You spend it all today, you have a whole week before you can come back.
Right.
That's number one. The second piece of advice is also this is from both of my parents, but more so my dad. And my dad would tell me, never be a liability on anyone and never let anyone be a liability on you. And he was specifically referring to this in relationships. So he would say, never marry a liability and never let a liability marry you. And his advice to me was, no matter what happens, you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. He said to me, I don't care how rich your husband is. I don't care how successful your husband is. You need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. So that's the advice my dad gave me. Um, Progress over perfection. My mother would tell me this because sometimes I get stuck in, oh, it has to be this way, this way. I'm an Aries and my brain sometimes is like,
I love that. I love that. Progress over perfection.
yes. And it just get it done. And you can revise it, you can improve it, you can refine it, but just get it done. And it's also the idea of don't be your own stumbling block. Don't get caught up in waiting for it to be so perfect that you just lose
Right.
out on opportunities of getting stuff done. And then this is a very common piece of advice, and this is in the Bible, and it is comparison is a thief of joy. It'll steal your peace. It'll steal your happiness. It can even steal your health because you're so worried about what's happening on the other side of the fence, as opposed to focusing on yourself and your growth and your personal development and, your health. So don't worry about what other people are doing, especially in the financial world. People are like, oh my God, this person is 40, they've made it. This person is 45, they've made it. This person paid off their loans by 30. No, your time is your own unique time. Your pace is your own unique pace. Do not allow whatever else somebody's doing disrupt your peace, your joy, your happiness. Focus on yourself. Your competition should be you. You yesterday is who you should be competing with. How can I be better today?
Right.
Those are the 4 pieces of advice I would share.
I love that. Competing against your own last best. I love that. And Bola, this conversation has been so enjoyable, so teaching and inspiring. Please come back again and talk with us, okay?
I would love to.
Thank you. And listen, I am just loving the women in your family and that your dad gave you 2 of the pieces of advice that you shared just now. I'm loving up on the men as well. Thank you from my heart to your home.
Thank you so much, Janice.
Thank you.